Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. I'm giving a few moments and we're letting everyone come on. I hear the rain outside of my door and wondering if you're dealing with the same on your end. But thank you all so much for joining us. We're kicking off this Strategies on Equity series today. I'm Bobby White. I lead public policy and government affairs with the Greater Memphis Chamber. All right. I'm going to share a brief video, and following that video, I'm going to introduce our President and CEO for the Greater Memphis Chamber, Beverly Robertson. But first, just one moment. And thank you all for, again, being with us. That video, we saw a number of historic names and personalities in the history of business and community life here in Memphis, Tennessee. And we just happen to be privileged to have another historic name, Beverly Robertson. I've been calling her the president for the pandemic, but she's also been the president for the protests we've seen of recent. And we just appreciate her leadership so much. And with that said, Beverly Robertson, the floor is yours. Beverly? Okay, seems to have been a bit of a technical difficulty on the other end. Beverly, I think you might be muted. We can't hear you or see you. Okay. All right, we're going to go on. We've privileged to be here today, and actually our time today, we have had a few sponsors who are helping us with this series, and we're going to actually hear from two of our sponsors that have sponsored the webinar series, Strategies on Equity, that we've put together, and then after that, we'll go further, and we'll come back to Beverly in a moment. But first, we want to hear from Catherine Gray with Independent Bank. Catherine?
Hey, Bobby, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Well, I'd just like to say that Independent Bank is extremely proud to be part of such an important series. It's a little difficult right now to have the necessary conversations about equity and diversity when everybody's doing their best to social distance. So a big thank you to the Greater Memphis Chamber for creating a space where we can still pursue improvement for our companies as well as our own personal development. This is truly a tremendous thing you all are doing for our great community. So thank you very much. And likewise, thank you to Fred Towler for kicking this series off and sharing with us your insight and wisdom, and not to mention your time today. And last but not least, we applaud everyone who's tuned in today, and we're looking forward to learning right alongside with you. Thanks for being here, and thanks, Bobby. I'll turn it back to you.
Catherine, thank you so much. I want to brag on your husband. He's responsible for painting that background. So
thank you so much.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, and I'm at that point. Also, Southwest Tennessee Community College, they are our Zoom sponsors. And so We normally, Dr. Tracy Hall, they're a member of our Chairman's Circle. She could not be with us today, but we're happy to have the leader for government affairs with Southwest Tennessee Community College, none other than my friend Sherman Greer. Let's hear from Sherman. Unmute yourself, Sherman. We can't hear you. All right, I think we may have had a bit of a problem there. Beverly, can you hear me? We want to go back to Beverly. Are you there, Beverly?
Okay, Bobby, I'm trying again. Am I back now?
Yes, you are back.
I'm sorry. So trying to go between the phone and the laptop, and now the phone cut out on me. But thanks, Bobby. On behalf of Dr. Tracy Hall and Southwest Tennessee Community College, I'd just like to say that we're extremely happy and honored to co-sponsor this discussion today on equity and inclusion and diversity. In education, specifically higher education, equity is what we do and what we are all about at Southwest. So I won't take more than a minute or so of your time because I know we have a great speaker and you didn't come to hear me. But some of the things we've done at Southwest to address equity and diversity is we've expanded our governance council by including not only our senior staff, but our faculty senate, and we've included other voting members from all segments of the college. That be students, that would be professional staff, and that would be your facilities, and pretty much every level of the college is now represented on our governance council, which votes on all of our policies and procedures, and that's how we govern. I also mentioned that we are an Achieving the Dream college. It's a national organization that looks at colleges and basically looks at all your policies, those also around diversity and equity, and try and help you get to a better place and make sure everyone and every voice is being heard and recognized. One thing we know is that equity does not just happen, but you have to be intentional about setting goals and working towards them. And to that end, we've established a lot of different programs to address underrepresented African American males. They traditionally have taken had the lowest completion rates. Had the lowest completion rates. We've looked at our veteran groups and provided spaces for them, even for some of them that have dogs that they may bring with them that help them get through the day. We provide spaces for our non-traditional students where they may have coffee shops and get them away from some of the more traditional students in terms of being able to study and just relax. So we really look outside the classroom and inside the classroom and all around the college to try and address diversity, not just by sending out our climate surveys, which we do, of course, twice a year, but really trying to make sure we hear our students and our faculty and the community, because that's what we are, the community college. And so I'll yield back, Bobby, and I'm interested in this meeting today, and I know we're going to hear some great things. And thank you all for sponsoring this. I think this is great.
Thank you so much, Sherman. I really appreciate it and appreciate you all's partnership. And again, they are the sponsors, as is Independent Bank, for this series, and we're thankful to them. We're going to ask our panelists to mute their phones because we got it figured out. I thought it was an okay introduction. I almost feel as if I should introduce you again, but let me just present a friend to us all, Beverly Robertson. I think we got the unmuted problem handled. It was not on her end, it was on the other end. But Beverly, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
We can hear you fine.
Okay. Well, look, that's what's important. It doesn't matter that you can't see me right now, but I'm getting ready to see if we can unmute that. Let's see. Here I am.
There you go.
Yes. So I am so happy to welcome all of you to our session. We're excited about the first of a 5-part series around strategies on equity. And we are especially honored to thank our sponsors for being with us today. We really appreciate your involvement. There's very little we can do without your support. So thanks again for sponsoring this important session. And I know we're in for a treat because we heard from this gentleman last month when he joined us for a session on how do we create an inclusive workplace culture. So now we get to hear from him on the issue of equity. And now, Bobby, it is your opportunity and your privilege to be able, I thought I was introducing you, Fred, but Bobby took my steam away from me. But I'm going to allow Bobby to go ahead and introduce you today, but just for today. Bobby, it's yours.
Fred, consider this a two-part introduction. I'll close it out. She opened it up. But Fred Towler, our friend, as he is the Chief Diversity Officer and Vice President of Global Talent Management with International Paper. He is actually a graduate of the University of Memphis, the Fogelman College of Business and Economics, and was recognized as a distinguished alumnus. He attended Northwestern University, Kellogg School of Management Executive Program, and the University of Virginia, Darden School of Business Executive Program. He's been with IP since 1987. And I will tell you, I was absolutely inspired, as Beverly mentioned, by his talk some time ago. It's been a couple of weeks ago, that quite frankly, we shaped this whole session around wanting to hear from Fred Towler. And so I'm going to give it to him, but even as I give it to you, Fred, I just want you to talk a little bit, tell us a little bit about where you all are, but there's specifically a question I want to kind of maybe lead us off with is this. You know, I've been inspired by you all's work in terms of the metrics and the goal setting that you put, and what this journey, I'm interested to know, even as you give your introductory remarks or whatever, what this journey has looked like for your company, getting to the point of now having strategies and tactics outlined as you consider diversity and inclusion. But with that said, ladies and gentlemen, Fred Towler.
All right. Thank you, Bobby. I really appreciate it. Can you hear me well?
We can hear you wonderfully well.
Okay, good. First of all, thank you. And thank you to the Chamber for giving me the opportunity. I think you're giving me a little bit too much credit, but I'll take it. I am both honored and humbled by being one of the individuals to help kick off this series and just kind of share what we have to say here for International Paper. The one thing that I would say is that we've been on this journey for a while, and as I kind of think about it, we've got a lot more work to do. So hopefully what I have to share today you find value in, and hopefully we'll give people some ideas in terms of how to start their own journey, or maybe how to accelerate their journey. We are in a learning process as an organization, learning how to accomplish our own goals and objectives. We have been, very successful as a company over the years, and we've got our processes and approaches to how we've done that, and we are applying those same processes and approaches to how we think about diversity and inclusion. So when you think about that, Bobby, the journey is really all about how we accomplish business results for the organization. And I think that's really an important aspect of all of this. If for no other reason, the reason to do this is because you want to achieve business results for your organization and for your enterprise. And it has to be integrated in how you go about getting those results. At International Paper, safety is incredibly important to us. And we want people to go home the same way they came to work every day. And we've had a safety culture for the organization for a significant number of years, for a long time. But it wasn't until we took a step back and said, we need to be transformative. We need to make sure that it is how we do business. And when we made it how we did business and how we accomplished business results, then it became part of our culture. And so that's what I would say in terms of diversity and inclusion for International Paper. It's really making it, a part of our culture and how we get business results. The other things that we will talk about a little bit are things that are foundational to accomplishing any goal, and that is ensuring that you've got accountability and ensuring that you have sustainability as well. So we'll talk a little bit about that also. I'm going to share my screen and kind of walk through this as quickly as I can, but then hopefully have the opportunity to answer more questions, if that's okay.
And Fred, as you transition to share your screen, I want to let everyone know, as we're going through this, please feel free to drop any questions or things you'd like to have comments on in the Q&A. Hit the Q&A at the top of your screen and type in any questions, and we'll make sure those get shared. Go ahead, Fred.
Okay, Bobby, can you see my screen?
We can see your screen.
Okay, all right, good, thank you. So I started off really talking about kind of the why, and I've got to give Korn Ferry organization a whole lot of credit for this. As we kind of started our journey the last couple of years, we started really trying to make sure that we understood the business case for diversity and inclusion. And we really talk about it in the context of ensuring our employees are engaged, they feel included, right, and that they feel like they can collaborate. So, and if you do those things, then that takes you a long way, a lot of the way in terms of accomplishing a diverse and inclusive and equitable culture within the organization. So the business case, really, we all are facing the same challenges. How do we grow our business? How do we grow our market share? How do we earn more revenue? How do we become more productive? All of those things are about developing and delivering business results for your organization. And in order to do that, okay, you got to be able to differentiate yourself. And in order to differentiate yourself, all right, you obviously need to innovate. And when you innovate, one thing that's really important is, really having diversity of thought. You bring a number of the best minds, and it happens today in many of your organizations. You bring a number of the best minds together, and you think about how to solve business problems. And people bring with them their diverse experiences that they've had. So that's the diversity of thought that we often talk about. And for me, that's kind of the brass ring of diversity and inclusion. When you can have the diversity of thought, certainly you have diversity of ethnicity, race, gender, sexual preferences, all of those type of things, but all of those help to create diversity of thought. So in order to innovate, you need that diversity. And in order to activate that diversity, you have to include them and you have to collaborate them. And so when you do that and you include and collaborate with them, then what you have to do is you have to manage all of this. And managing all of this means ensuring that you have leaders and behaviors in the organization that drive inclusive and collaboration. So at any rate, that's kind of how we think about it, and that's one of the driving elements of the journey that we're on. Go to the next page here. There we go. Okay. What I'd like to share is kind of our strategic framework. Actually, I've only been in this role for the organization since the end of 2018. And one of the things that I wanted to do was to take a step back and try to understand how do we think about diversity and inclusion and it is fitting within the strategic framework of the company. So we developed a strategic framework for diversity and inclusion. And the way we think about it is our workforce, our workplace, and our marketplace. So, and at the center of that is diversity and inclusion. And I try to get a little cute with this because you can see that the diversity and inclusion in the middle is translucent. So, and what that means is that you have to actually see it all coming together. It's not until you see workforce, workplace, and marketplace coming together at its intersections that you're able to ensure that you've got the right foundation for a diverse and inclusive and collaborative environment. So our workforce is really about the talent management in the organization. Our workplace is really about ensuring that where our employees work, whether it's in the office, outside the office, in one of our manufacturing facilities, or wherever they call their workplace, inclusive of our commercial folks that are out in the field, we have to make sure that that environment drives inclusivity and collaboration. Inclusivity is specifically around belonging. Employees would want to feel as though they belong. And then there's the marketplace. The marketplace is really about being viewed by all of our constituencies, our shareholders, our customers, our employees, our suppliers, as a responsible employer. Are we doing the things that are important to ensure that our constituencies see us as responsible? Now, all of these things kind of come together and really help us achieve our vision at International Paper. Our vision is really to be successful, sustainable, and responsible. And in order to do that, we believe we must achieve diversity and inclusion. We see diversity and inclusion also as being part of what sustains International Paper. International Paper has existed for over 120 years, and I would submit that we've had some form and level of diversity and inclusion, as you and your organizations have, throughout that time period, because if you didn't have it, you wouldn't be successful. What's happened and what's changed is that the requirements have changed, and just like our customers expect something different from us, so do our employees, and so do our shareholders, and so do our suppliers. So we are evolving as an organization and still on our journey, but we very much see diversity and inclusion as a sustainability effort for International Paper that allows us to be sustainable for the next 120 years. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, kind of our goals and kind of the journey and how we came up with those goals. I apologize for the background noise, but it's thundering outside, at least here in East Memphis, so I'll speak a little bit louder just in case. Bobby, you talked a lot about SMART goals, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-based. Some of the things that we have looked to include in our goals is where there is specific, there is also sustainability. Where we talk about achievable goals, they also include accountability. So the organization has to have an accountability structure. And then where they are realistic, they're also relevant to make sure that they are relevant for what we need to accomplish. So what you see in front of you are the 5 goals for International Paper. And when we talk about SMART goals, each one of those goals has an element of that SMART. Our first goal, and we've communicated these goals within the organization. We established these last year. We started working on these in January of 2019 and spent a great deal of time and effort with the organization, both leaders and employees, kind of working through and understanding exactly what should be our goals, how we would want to make sure that we achieve those goals, what are the important elements to make sure exist within those goals. So we've engaged our organization throughout the entire process to the point that where at the end of last year, we actually had the goals approved by the leadership of the organization. And then in February of this year, we had our goals approved by our board of directors. So yes, we engage our board of directors and the leadership of the organization in the process. And I just recently had a conversation with our board of directors about a week ago to provide them with an update. And we've had active discussion around our diversity and inclusion efforts for International Paper. So the story there is that your employees should be engaged and the leadership of the organization should be engaged. And those folks, if you will, that hold you accountable, your board of directors, your shareholders, whoever that may be, should also be engaged in the process because that's part of the accountability structure. We have gender and minority diversity representation goals for the organization. We have U.S. minority representation goals, and we're also working towards goals for our regions such as Brazil and EMEA, Mexico, and China as well, Asia. In addition, we have goals focused around diverse talent in our talent pools. Everyone does succession planning regardless of which organization. You're planning for turnover in your organization, whether it's at the production, manufacturing, operating level, or whether it's also at the salaried level, the office white-collar level. And what we have decided to do is to establish goals to make sure that as we think about that process, that the pool of talent that we have is also diverse. We at International Paper for the last 20 years have conducted an engagement survey. And within our engagement survey, we have about 40 plus questions. Within that engagement survey, we have a bank of questions that are specifically focused on diversity and inclusion. And our goal there is to improve our results in that engagement survey process between now and 2025. And we'll have 3 opportunities to do that. And we have a whole process set up around our engagement survey and our planning process for our employees. Retention. Retention is incredibly important. You've got two elements. One is the talent that you acquire, but more importantly, your ability to retain that talent, all right? Because if you can't retain that talent, then the likelihood of that talent being available in that talent pool and ready when jobs come open of increased responsibility obviously will be minimized. So we have a goal focused around improving the retention of diverse salary talent within the organization. And then the last one, the fifth one, is really focused on what we call learning, growing, and development. How do we ensure that our employees develop and demonstrate inclusive and collaborative behaviors? In other words, ensuring that we create experiences for our employees that help them learn what we believe is acceptable behavior to be inclusive and collaborative. The average individual learns most of what they know and grows from experiences. So 70% of what we learn comes from experiences, 20% comes from how we're coached and exposed, and only 10% comes from formal training. All right, so as we think about that, one example, and I'll move to the next slide, is what we're talking about today. And Bobby, what you have done is you have created the opportunity for an experience for folks to have that are joining this call and webcast. So whether people know it or not, they are learning and growing from the experience that we're having today. 70% of what we learn is through experience, okay? The other thing is, I'll move on here to the next page. One of the things that's really important to us and what International Paper has done a really great job in is how do we operationalize our goals? What I would say it's one thing to have the goals, but if you don't integrate those goals and tactics into how you achieve business results and how you do work, the likelihood of you accomplishing your goals goes down significantly. And this is kind of our approach to how we integrate and operationalize our goals into how we get work done and how we produce results at International Paper. I won't go through all of the details on these, but there's some very key words in here. One is ensuring an accountability structure, and we talked about that. I can't say enough about ensuring that you have accountability, because if you don't have accountability, the likelihood of accomplishing your objectives are going to be pretty slim. And most of us think about that in terms of what our shareholders hold us accountable for, the results we're required to accomplish. We think about that in the terms of performance evaluations and setting objectives every year, and you get held accountable. There has to be an accountability structure in place and the rigor around how you review what's happening on a regular basis, whether you do that once a month or once a quarter. I would say whatever the approach is that you're using to review business results, and whatever the frequency that you use to review business results, you should think about doing the same or applying the same for these goals. One of the other things that I would point to here is really about communicating the progress. Transparency is really important. You've got to be transparent for the organization. The organization has to know what the goals are. They have to know that they're SMART, okay? They are time-based. And then part of that is allowing the organization to hold you accountable, because that's part of the accountability process, because you also want to manage lack of process. And then you want to sustain it, and then you want to check and adjust it. So that's how we are approaching it. I'm not suggesting that, it's a 100% solution, but I do think you've got to have something that operationalizes and integrates those into how you do business. And so the last piece, Bobby, is really all about, International Paper and how we think about diversity and inclusion. Our IP way is really about doing the right things in the right ways for the right reasons all the time. And we think about diversity, inclusion, equity, collaboration, and engagement, all those things is really about, it's the right thing to do. And we've got to do it in the right way. And you must do it for the right reasons. And you've got to do it all of the time. Thanks, Bobby.
That is great, Fred. I actually wanted to hop in a number of ways, but I do believe this. I'd love to hear, I have a couple of things, and then we have questions that have already come in. Love to hear you talk about, because I guess what I have seen, there you talked about accountability and sustainability, huge. Intentionality is also understood, but there's one piece to this that, I mean, this is the type of thing that we may have closed with, but I'd love for us to maybe talk about it now. You talk about how all of this is being done. This isn't some side project to make us feel good about one another. This is something that speaks to the business's bottom line, right? So yep. I'd love to hear you talk about how integral is. I mean, I got to tell you, I write so much when we talk. I have pages of notes here. But to innovate, you need to diversify, and diversity of thought are the things that you're looking for in many ways. But I'd love for you to just kind of get to that piece about how this diversity and inclusion speaks to the bottom line. So, even if it's for selfish reasons, at the end of the day, it's to benefit the business. Can you say more about that?
Yeah. I mean, let's be really frank and candid. All right, we're in business to make money. All of us are. All right. We want to be able to make sure at International Paper, we want to be able to make sure we're doing the things and we're earning the type of returns that are necessary in order for us to provide jobs for our employees, to provide our products for our customers, to provide a return for our shareholders. Okay. So all of that, all right, is obviously important. You can't be successful in that if you don't have diverse individuals in your organizations that think differently. If you've got groupthink, the likelihood of your success is going to be significantly minimized. So therefore, if for no other reason, surround yourself with individuals that think differently, that have different experiences and backgrounds, and allow them to bring those in and feel included, right. To feel like they belong, and collaborate them, and then you want to ensure that they are engaged. If you can do that and do that successfully, then you will be successful. And it's not easy to do, okay? Someone told me once when they said, diversity is easy. Inclusion is the difficult piece, because you have to make sure that you include that talent and take advantage of the talent. Does that help answer your question, Bobby?
Absolutely. And listen, I could talk to you all day, but I want to get as much to the questions that have come in, because I think there's some really good ones and kind of mirroring some of what I'd like for you to talk more about. One of them, sure. I'll hit you with two at a time, because these two are related here. It's IP developing minority representative goals for regions outside of the U.S. or just gender goals. That is one. And well, I'll let you answer that one, and I'll come quickly to the next.
Yeah, that's actually a great question. Okay. And diversity means something different in all of the regions where we operate around the organization. Okay. And while we certainly have the diversity of thought, one thing that we are able to do in the U.S. that we're not able to do outside the U.S. is how we track and capture the information. Individuals in the U.S. identify themselves based on their ethnicity. That doesn't always happen outside of the U.S. And there's something that a lot of folks on the phone can appreciate, data protection rights. And some of those data protection rights, which are more aggressive outside of the U.S. than they are inside the U.S., right. Don't allow you to capture all of that. People don't identify themselves. So gender is universal. Mm-hmm. But what we said to our regions is the gender goal is a universal goal. Think about your region goal and what you want to accomplish within your region. Some of that may be individuals with disabilities. Mm. Some of that may be individuals that choose to identify themselves as with sexual preferences. Mm-hmm. Okay. So what our regions are doing are identifying goals, all right, that will be specific to their region, which are a complement and a companion to the enterprise-wide gender goal. Does that help answer the question, Bob?
I think that's beautiful. And I think it also speaks to how hearing from employees and allowing them to shape what is important. I think that's absolutely huge. Even in that answer, it just speaks again to you all's culture and strategies. And I love it. Outreach to minority women in business enterprise, minority women-owned businesses. What is International Paper doing in that space? What does that look like for those businesses that are interested in becoming a vendor or looking to partner?
Yeah, sure. International Paper has a diversity supplier program. For those of you that might be interested, you're welcome to go onto our website. There's information on our website about our diversity supplier program, but we have, oh geez, as long as I can remember, have always had an active diversity supplier program. And we have partnered with, obviously, the Memphis Area Chamber of Commerce, and then, you know, some of the other organizations within the city in order to support that effort. You know, we have over $5 million within the last 3 to 4 years spent with diversity suppliers within International Paper, not just in Memphis, but across the entire organization. We are a largely manufacturing organization. And one of the things that we attempt to do is to make sure that we are identifying diverse suppliers who can support us in our core businesses. All right, so our materials are chemicals, and one of our primary materials is forest, which is sustainable, and working with private landowners. A number of those private landowners are minorities as well. Okay, so for those folks that might be interested, you know, you can go onto our website, but I think we have a fairly aggressive outreach program. There's more for us to do. We can be doing more, and we are doing more. Does that help, Bobby?
It does, and I'll say to everyone on the line, I've already talked to Fred about this. We're going to gather the information, presentation. It's already being recorded, but we're ensured to capture this information as well. The link to the website for more information. I have a question here. The engagement survey that you referenced, who fills it out? And could you just say a little bit more about that engagement survey? Because I find it pretty fascinating in terms of you know, actually getting people to share where they are and, you know, of the road ahead. I'd love to hear you say a little bit more about that survey.
Sure. International Paper, we've been doing engagement surveys for 20 years now with our employees. And I think it's really a bright spot for the organization amongst other bright spots because we have a participation rate of plus 90%. And now that's 50,000 employees worldwide participating in our engagement survey process. So the employees complete the engagement survey. It's completely anonymous. Obviously, it's about 40 questions that covers a broad range of the understanding the employee experience. An inclusive environment is part of the employee experience. And once we're done with our survey, we capture the results. The results are reported all the way up to the board of directors. Each organization is expected to understand where they have an opportunity to improve, and we produce what we call action plans. Every manager and supervisor in the organization is expected to have an action plan where they focus on those areas of improvement, but also focus on those areas where they can continue to drive the result that they're getting. So hopefully that answers your question around our engagement survey.
Absolutely. I have one here. This goes to actually, and first of all, 90%. I couldn't get 90% of the people in my household. And it's just 3 of us, right? So to do anything, right?
When you work at it for 20 years, and you have a culture of engagement, and you let the employees know that one, their opinion and their responses will be acted upon. More importantly, it's anonymous.
Yeah. Yes.
Right? And they know that there's a level of confidentiality, but then you put the action behind it by engaging the work teams to talk about it, and you've got the document in hand so they know you're doing something with it.
And I think what that does, that speaks to engagement. You and I, we've talked about what authentic engagement really looks like, because I think so often we see leadership that they have a way of thinking and they only want to hear the thoughts that will support the actions that they already have in mind to do. But then the other part is the cultures that quite frankly do not really, they don't, cultures that, hey, we love to hear what you say, but you're afraid to say something because there could be reprisals if in fact what you say is anti to what the mood and mode of the day may be. So I do appreciate those thoughts, because I think that kind of gives insight into what is so good about what you guys have been able to do over a number of years. Riddle me this. Minority spend is another one. It's a hot item that we received a number of questions on. And, in government, we have disparity studies. In government, there are all those disparity studies that say, that give you the opportunity to now say that 25% on this project and 15 or 30% on that project. With that said, are there goals that IP sets when it comes to MWBE spend on opportunities?
Yeah, there are goals. We set those goals at the enterprise level, though. We don't set those goals by project per se, all right, because we don't operate similar to how the government operates.
Thankfully.
Yeah, exactly. But the diversity supplier program and the goals are established as a part of our global sourcing and procurement organization. We have an incredibly talented individual, but I might add is also a female and Asian, who is our Chief Procurement Officer. And she is responsible for ensuring that we set meaningful, realistic, and stretch targets for our diversity supplier program. And we set those goals and targets with the understanding that in some cases, we will need to work with certain suppliers in order to develop them.
Right.
Certain diverse suppliers, because again, we are a manufacturing organization. A lot of what we do and purchase, there are not a lot of diverse suppliers, women and minority owned, in a lot of what we do. We tend to think really about the office environment and things that we do in the office. The amount of dollars that we spend from an office environment pales in comparison to the spend that occurs in our manufacturing and our box plant operations. So that's where our biggest opportunity is, and where we try to work with a number of diversity suppliers in order to develop them and grow their business so they can support us. The other piece of that is that it creates competition. So it's good for us because it creates competition, and we've got another source of supply rather than a single source, which happens to be a majority. Does that help?
Yeah, I know that's great. And I would just say this, that for huge companies, first of all, calling all procurement officers, please get in contact with Bobby White, bwhite@memphischamber.com. We are looking for procurement officers because, one of the things that you spoke to is just this idea that over a period of years, if we know that widgets are what you are looking for, in 20 years, many millions of dollars every year being spent on widgets, but there are no MWBEs in that space coming out year after year and saying that, hey, we're looking for widgets. Oh, we're looking for MWBEs, and there are none. Question becomes, what are the other strategies that we can, as we try to speak to, problem sourcing and finding individuals and companies in certain spaces that, maybe not the majority companies, and how you can grow those, starting from zero and getting up to where they can support a company of your size. Embracing incomplete thinking. You use that term, and I have an inquiring mind that wants to know, what do you mean by that?
Incomplete thinking is a concept that we came across as an organization a few years ago as we look to focus on how we improve our execution commercially with our customers. And it's part of what we call our market-based value training. And what it really refers to is that you don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to have everything all figured out. So as we think about our goals and we recognize that, our goals are stretch goals, they're aggressive goals, they're complicated goals. But recognizing that, between now and 2030, which is when the majority of these goals are due, we have some goals that are interim goals that occur in 2025. We don't have to have everything figured out when we start the process, because if you wait, then you won't get there. You'll spend more time trying to make sure it's all packaged and it's nice and neat, and you got every answer and everything figured out before you take action. So incomplete thinking is the willingness to take a step back and say, I don't know how we're going to get there, but we're going to get there. When we say at an international paper that we're going to stop having fatalities, we're going to stop hurting people, and people are going to go home the same way they came. We didn't know how we were going to get it done, but we knew we needed to do it. And so we embraced incomplete thinking to accomplish our objective. Does that help, Bobby?
No, absolutely. I think I call it the paralysis of analysis. We can so frustrate ourselves trying to get things perfect, but I think it's don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. So I do appreciate that. I have a question here. As you talk about diversity, there's a question regarding individuals who are 50 years plus and how corporate America, there have been issues with that age group being employed and remaining employed, notwithstanding the pandemic that we've endured. A question becomes, are there any strategies or thoughtfulness that relates to not just gender and not just ethnicity, but also age?
Yeah, generational diversity is what you're referring to, Bobby, and that's really also something that's important and embedded in what we're trying to accomplish as well. I'll use myself as an example. I plan on working for a whole lot more years, and I'm a whole lot older than 50. So when you think about that, how do you make sure that the older population, let's say, is also continuing to feel like they're engaged, and then also that you have opportunities to where you're willing to bring those individuals into the workplace as well. Obviously we are an equal opportunity employer, right? And it extends also to ensuring that we are bringing individuals in regardless of their age. We're also making sure that we leverage the generational knowledge of the organization as well. Because a number of employees, as they get to the later stages of their career, they have a tremendous amount of knowledge. And so how do we create a situation to where when they're ready to transition, we also transition that knowledge and allow them to continue to feel engaged, that we collaborate with them, they feel included, and the value that they've brought to the company for that time. So individuals obviously can work as long as they want to work at International Paper, as long as they continue to produce results. But generational diversity is an important concept and an aspect, and making sure that that continues to be the fabric of the organization. Does that help?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I made a comment earlier, love to all government employees everywhere. I've been one for a very long time. But it's the funniest thing as you're talking about that. And so I'm thinking succession planning and the real need for it in so many organizations, and government is definitely one of them. But I'm also thinking of the reverse. Many places you go, you see older but not younger. So when you begin to talk about the need for diversity, you know, I'm thinking in my mind how organizations should benefit on both ends. So I appreciate that context that you're providing. Fred, let me ask you this, and two questions, and then we're going to close out. And again, ladies and gentlemen, in our coming sessions over the coming weeks, we'll have more people. Wanted to kind of start here because we thought IP just does such a great job in so many ways and so many things to learn from. But one thing I want you to talk about, Sherman actually mentioned it earlier, and it comes up all the time. I've had pre-conversations with panelists who are going to be talking to us in weeks ahead. And the word intentionality just keeps on coming up, right? Love to hear you just kind of share your thoughts on that. And then maybe taking a step back. You've been in the role since 2018, but want to hear you talk about lessons learned. Like if you were to put your, if you will, your teaching hat on here, and you were asked to come in and to speak to a medium-sized organization that wants to learn and see what to do, but as is the case in business and life in general, many times you're learning not just what to do, but what not to do. Would love to hear you just talk about, number one, your intentionality and the importance of it. Well, and I get that all over the place, but then the other part is this, lessons learned. What is there that Fred Towler would share?
The first question in terms of intentionality, I mean, obviously, I think about it this way, all right? We all know, and there's all been a time in our business and professional lives or in our personal lives that we wanted something so bad, all right? And when we wanted that, how did we behave? We were intentional. We were deliberate. We were thoughtful, okay? We were purposeful. All right. So when it comes to diversity and inclusion, kind of what I say to the organization is, how bad do you want it? So
Love it.
You've got,
love it.
Yeah. How bad do you want it? Because we know as an organization how to produce results. We do. And as many of the organizations that are listening today, you know how to produce results. You've been intentional, purposeful, deliberate about what you've done in order to accomplish those results. So that's what I would say about being intentional. And we've done the same thing here at International Paper. We are applying those concepts to these D&I goals because we want it bad, because we know the value for having it is benefit for all constituencies for International Paper. The second thing that you talked about in terms of lesson learned, I've learned a lot in the last almost 2 years now. And what I've learned is that this is not easy. There is a reason to do this, and we've talked about the business case for it, if for no other reason, because you want to grow your bottom line, all right, this is the reason to do it. But there are other reasons why to do this as well. And if it was easy, we wouldn't be having the conversation that we're having today. So what I have learned is give yourselves time to think through exactly what you're trying to accomplish. It has to be linked to driving business results, and the organizational leaders, whether it's supervisors, managers, directors, whatever, they have to own this. If they don't own this, this is not going to happen. That's where the accountability comes into play. And I guess the last thing I would say about that, Bobby, is give yourself credit for the small wins. So you got to give yourself credit, celebrate those successes. Don't celebrate too long. Celebrate those successes, but move quickly from there to drive in more results and just work your plan. Create your plan and work your plan, and communicate and be transparent to the organization. I think those are things in terms of lessons learned, and hopefully that answers your question.
That is, I mean, that is right on time. I appreciate those reflections. And we're a couple of minutes before 1. Any other thoughts, Fred? Because quite frankly, we'll end it right there. But any other thoughts or things that we didn't mention that you wanted to mention?
I'd just like to say thank you for the opportunity. I think you've given us a lot of credit. I'm not sure that we deserve all of that credit, all right? We've done a lot of great work as an organization. We have more work to do in the organization. We're on a journey. So this is not a destination, okay? This is a journey.
That's right. Right.
You have to be willing to go on that journey, but importantly, bring people along with you.
Right.
So I'm just thankful and fortunate that, you know, we have something to share as an organization. We have our leadership who's in full support and sharing with the rest of the leaders what his expectations are for International Paper. I feel like we've made a lot of progress, but we certainly have more progress to make. And again, I'm just hopeful and thankful that I've been given the opportunity to share what we're doing. And hopefully folks will find some value in what we've shared.
Absolutely. And let me just say, culture matters. You know, I have my brother-in-law has been out there for some years now, Leslie Beasley. And I tell you, I've learned the IP way from no one else. I've heard it over and again, as I have from other companies I've learned who have these employees who are bought in and invested. So we just appreciate your taking time. You guys continue to be a leader for all of the right reasons, right? And so we appreciate your taking time.
All the time.
Absolutely, all of the time, right? So we appreciate your taking time, Fred. And ladies and gentlemen, we thank you all so much for joining. And on behalf of our President and CEO, Beverly Robertson, we look forward to seeing you on the next time, and we will be in contact with the information that's been shared, as well as the webinar itself, which was recorded. Thank you all very much, and we look forward to seeing you on the next time. Thanks again, Fred.
Thank you, Bobby. Take care.